But I look at that as being the occasion of sin as well, because that is not actually, if you're bored, it's not a sin. If you're lonely, it's not a sin. So I look at all of those surrounding areas as being the occasion of sin as well. I need to have better habits so that when I am bored, when I'm lonely, when I'm angry, when I'm tired, I know what to do. Because currently what I'm doing is leading me into a dark place.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Tell Them For Me, brought to you by Road to Purity. We are joined by a very special guest today, Father Jonathan Meyer. He was ordained a priest in 2003 for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. After his ordination, he served as the Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministry for the Archdiocese. He's also served at several parishes prior to being named as the pastor of 4 parishes comprised of 7 churches in Dearborn County, Indiana. He maintains a presence on the internet with weekly homilies and other teachings, and in 2022 he began to minister as a national preacher for the Eucharistic Revival. In his spare time, he coaches track and cross-country, coaching public schools for the past 15 years. Father Jonathan Meyer, thank you so much. Welcome.
It's a joy to be here. Thank you for welcoming me, brothers.
Thank you. Well, by your bios, it looks like you were very busy there with 7 parishes.
Yes,
4 parishes, 7 churches.
7 churches, yeah.
There's people who like to collect things. I like to collect parishes. It's a hobby of mine. Okay.
And you're not busy enough. You got to coach cross-country track and so forth, too.
Yeah, it's really kind of like, at this point, like a seamless part of my life. Trying to evangelize those who are in our public schools, and sports is clearly where our young people are at. So it's a great way to make an impact in young people's lives in a pretty profound way.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
So we've seen a few of your videos online, your podcast, your own YouTube videos, and as with Road to Purity and who we are, we're very big in purity, pornography, sexual addiction, those kinds of things, and you speak out on those more than most priests. And I guess first question is, what is it that has brought you to decide to do that, even though it's, so many priests just don't want to talk on the subject. They're afraid to push back and whatever, but you do what you need to do, which is fantastic. But what motivated that?
Yeah, I thank the Lord a lot for my earliest assignments as a priest. We're working directly with young people as the Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministry. And with that, of course, comes a lot of retreats, a lot of retreat ministry. And with that, of course, comes a lot of confessions, a lot of conversations with young people about what the problems are in their life, what's keeping them from being fully alive, what's holding them back. And clearly, pornography, premarital sex, just a life of indulgence and pleasure was something that our young people were and continually are struggle with is the devil just grabs a hold of them, as we know, like at a younger and younger age. And so I began to realize, just hearing confessions over and over again, meeting people outside the confessional, having conversations with them, trying to help them overcome addiction. I began to realize how big of a problem this was, and particularly dealing with young people. I was like, if no one is out there saying anything, then how is this ever going to stop? And particularly when I looked at the young people that were being affected by this and that their parents didn't know, their parents had no clue. And these young men and women were suffering terribly and no one was willing to speak up. And so I felt very called to help my people. And yes, I think we should preach a lot of homilies on charity and mercy and love and friendship and joy and all of these other great things. But if someone is enslaved and, is constantly dealing with issues of shame and guilt and destroying their ability to look into the human being as a child of God instead of as an object, like, I'm not doing my part. So I saw it as an obligation that I had really to help people that were struggling. So I've been preaching, teaching, and giving talks and making videos as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Wow, that's great.
That's awesome. I'm curious why. So we deal with this a lot, and we've talked to a lot of different people, and we have a lot of stuff we try and work directly with priests to help do essentially kind of what you've been doing. But you said no one's speaking up. Why do you think that is, that no one's willing to really speak out on this? What is everybody so afraid of? Or is it fear?
I think the further and further that I get into it, I think the reason is like, so when I first started, like the first time that I dedicated an entire homily to it, I never mentioned the word porn. I used the word corn. And I did it because I was like, I'm in fear that young people who are really, really young will go home and search the word porn because they don't know what the word is. And I actually no longer stand by that in the sense that since internet exposure is now around 9 for a young person, like they're going to find it no matter what. And I just need to be very explicit about this, just as we're very explicit about abortion. You know, when I was a young Catholic being raised in the church in the mid 1970s, early 80s, early 90s, I never once remember hearing a homily on abortion. Never. In fact, when I entered the seminary, I was pro-choice. Not because I had made that deliberate decision. I was pro-choice because I never once heard our church ever speak on the topic. And I think when we look at the way that kind of we as a church embrace things, we're very slow moving. And so now I mean, there might be a parish out there where there's a priest who doesn't preach on the pro-life topic. I can't imagine that's the case, but that might be the case. But we all know that was the case. And so I think that there is this awkwardness that priests have of like, I'm mentioning the word or saying the word or bringing up the topic is going to make people feel awkward. The crazy thing is that it's just a part of people's lives now. Like pornography is, and even if you don't want to like call it pornography, I mean, I don't go to the movies. A lot of it, you know, for one of the reasons I don't go is because of this issue. But I mean, mainstream movies and films have full frontal nudity in them now. Like the objectification of men and women and the bodies that God gave them is become so normative that if we're not speaking against it, then who is? If we aren't trying to bring people to open their eyes to the dignity of the human person, then who is? So I think that there's a sense of like, I don't want to be called out by other parishioners or by my bishop or, because there is that fear, right? I would also say that and this isn't, I'm not trying to attack seminary formators, but clearly guys aren't in seminary being taught on how to preach on these topics. Like they're just trying to teach you guys how to preach. Like, how do you, speak? They aren't saying there isn't a class on how to preach on abortion, contraception, pornography, and whatever. Like
we had one.
And then a lot of priests, I would say, actually, if they take on one of those topics, they do get backlash, and they see the backlash as being. I mean, I remember actually preaching on pornography real early in my priesthood, and it started like an email discussion back and forth with a mom, and she said, "I just want my son to be playing with baseball cards," and she said, "You bringing up these topics like now, his brought something into his life that I wasn't ready for." And my response was, I remember this. So this is really like 2004 probably. And I said back to her, I said, "Well, I'm very thankful that you're having the conversation and not him and his classmate on the playground and his classmate teaching him about these things. And I'm glad that you're one up on him. You're one up on his classmates' view on human sexuality." So I think like we as a church also need to realize that like we have an opportunity if we seize the day. So one thing that I do is I meet with every one of we meet with our second grade parents 6 times prior to their child making their first Holy Communion. And during the first meeting of the sacramental preparation program for the parents, I give them all a talk on pornography. And they're all kind of like taken back. Like, I thought we were here to talk about bread and wine. And transubstantiation and my child making their first reconciliation. And then when I tell them all, the reason that I'm doing this is because your child is going to be exposed in the next 2 years to pornography. And the question is whether you're going to do something about it. They all look at me and they're all just like, thank you.
Good.
So I got that idea from a brother priest who came up with the idea as well. But that is not like a yearly talk that I give to all second grade parents. And any priest could do that. And in fact, any layperson could do that who works in sacramental prep. Even if it isn't a presentation, it could be, an email or a letter just saying your child is making their first reconciliation, and in the next 2 years, they're going to be exposed to internet pornography. What do you want their vision of the human body and human sexuality to be? Because it's your decision. And you're either going to act or you're not going to act. And so I think there's so much that can be done on the sense of formation, on protecting young people, and we as the church are the only people that can respond.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely,
the world is not going to respond. And I love my public school that I teach at, but they're not going to respond either.
Oh, yeah.
They don't see that as being, and I'm in a great public school system. I love my school system, but I can't, that's not, they aren't going to do it. So.
Nope.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couple things we want to touch on. I don't want to take the focus we want to keep talking about a lot of the work you're doing, but just you touched on so many things that we deal with. It's our bread and butter. First, I'll mention is just that, just so that you're aware, and we'd love to actually meet with you, at a different time and dive deep. We're putting together a comprehensive family program specifically designed for parents and families to help prevent their children from getting too far into sexuality, sexual addiction, pornography, and so on. And we've basically taken, that's been our bread and butter, is helping people who are struggling addicts for years. And we want to be proactive. We've learned a lot, and we have a lot of education and research and background that we want to take and apply to the family, and basically do kind of what you're doing at a younger age. And, one, it's exposing them to proper sexuality at a young age, but also exposing parents to, exactly like you said, they're going to probably be exposed to pornography somehow, as young as 9 years old is the average. What are you going to do about it? And we want to help teach them exactly what to do about it, how to be prepared for it, all the way from, toddler up through what's appropriate, all of those different types of things. So we'd love to, we're right now in kind of a development stage for that, and talking to as many different people as we can to kind of put something together that's really functional and cohesive. So I'd love to talk to you at another time about, what that class looks like. What do you tell them? And what have you seen that's been effective, that parents respond well to? But that's just one thing I wanted to make sure that you were aware of, that we're working on, because we're really excited about it. The other thing is just a funny little side note. I'll let you explain, but the concept of at the seminary, what's being taught. We actually did have a class taught at our seminary here in Denver for, 7 years that you did it?
Yeah, we one of our flagship programs is called Restoring God's Foundation. It's a full, in-depth recovery program. It's in book form, online form, small groups, all different methods, whatever's necessary and available. And for 7 years, I did that with the seminarians at St. John Vianney. It was an optional thing, but we had generally 18 to 25 seminarians every year go through this program.
But you also did on how to address to the confessional.
Well, that was the program we did for all those that were struggling with pornography themselves. Separately, for also, I think it was 8 years, we did to the Theology 4 students just before they were ordained the following spring. In the fall, we do a program, or kind of a one-day workshop on how to address sexual sin in the confessional when it's confessed. Because 3 Hail Marys that are in Our Father is not going to keep the guy from coming back. So what do you do? And you got 90 seconds. What do you say to make a difference? So that's kind of what we dealt into and worked with them on that. And I had so many priests that I saw, come into our parish that recognized me from that class and thanked me for it, and, you know, whatnot. And it was so popular that we actually created a full online video or online small course, 1 hour course with a whole bunch of penance ideas. It's the power of the confessional in our clergy formation enhancement program, and it's free for any priest to go through on our website. So it helps guide priests through that, what to say. Because you're right, there's no classes on this.
So yeah, I just want to mention, you mentioned, you know, this stuff isn't taught in seminaries. We actually did teach a piece of that in our seminary here for a number of years, and COVID kind of messed that up and some things have changed. We're hoping to be able to do it again, but I just thought I'd touch on that. But I want to get back to you.
One of the things that we will do is separately we'll get your address and we'll send you a bunch of information that might be resources to help for you, and so forth. Because what we do is we offer a plethora of items for priests to use in their parishes, whether it's in the confessional or, you know, or beyond, for that, and small groups, handouts, you know, all that kind of stuff that, you know, we'd love for you to have. But in the confessional, do you have anything particular that you try to convey when you hear, you know, when probably half the confessions come in, have this? What do you say when somebody comes in and says, I looked at porn?
Yeah, so I have a whole plethora of resources that I've created for myself. I have a business card that has a QR code, and I have about 6 or 7 videos on my YouTube channel, All Saints Catholic We Are One. All Saints We Are One is a YouTube channel, but there's a playlist, and there's a whole bunch of videos that go through and talk about ways to overcome pornography, masturbation, type addictions. I also have a letter. It's a 2-sided letter. One is pink for girls and one is blue for boys, but it's pretty much the same letter. And I've found that one of the biggest things is the occasion of sin. So at my parish, I've created a culture, because we preach enough about it, that 99% of all pornography takes place in a room that starts with a B, so bedroom, bathroom, or basement. So when they confess this in, my first question is bedroom, bathroom, basement, and then I want them to name the place. I think there's power in verbally saying, this is where I chose to do this. And then my next question is phone or computer, to name the device. And then my next question is, I need you to make a commitment to me and to Jesus today that you are never going to have your phone in your bedroom again. I'm never going to take my phone into my bathroom again. And if I do, then there has to be a punishment. I have to do 20 push-ups. I have to do whatever it is. But like, not even the fact that I look on porn on my phone again, but that I actually would even take it into that room again. And sometimes, like, I think, like, visually, like, and then, like, so the question is, like, if they say bedroom, I'm like, okay, so where do you charge your phone? And they'll say in my bedroom. Okay, I need you to take your phone charger. I need you to unplug your phone charger. I need you to take your phone charger into the kitchen and plug your phone charger into the wall. And I think, like, verbalizing, taking them through these steps, bedroom, bathroom, basement, 99.8% of all times, it's one of those 3 rooms. And then which device is it? I have to name the device. I also have a form that I have a flip phone, but I have a form that someone gave me. It's called "How to Turn Your Phone from a Smartphone into a Wise Phone," and it's a step-by-step process to turn off all the search abilities on your iPhone that would allow you to look at. So it's different than downloading, Covenant Eyes or some sort of blocker.
Sure.
It literally turns your phone into a phone that can only do, like if you get a link on your emails, you can't click on it on your phone. Or you go to a search, you can't go to it. Anyways, I don't know how it all works, but so I just have a bunch of resources in that sense. I have a few booklets that companies have published over the years that I have as well. So those are the resources that I have. And then I guess, for me, it's a big question of avoiding the occasion of sin. and then fasting and praying for the ability to fulfill the Beatitudes. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. And for me, that's always to see God in the human body. Like, how do I see as God sees? So it's not I see and I lust, but that I truly see the individual as a child of God. I see them as God truly sees them, in their beauty, in their goodness, in their worth, in their dignity, not
Right.
as someone to lust after.
Right.
Wow. That's incredible. That's a great set of tools that you've got.
Yeah.
Sounds like you have a really clear attack plan for the confessional. That's awesome.
Yeah. A lot of times, what we found that, of course, setting up the ways to block access, or just restricting, the content that you're looking at and so forth is a required first step. One of the things that we talk about, and I don't know if you've heard before, that porn is not about porn, so it's about something deeper. With the resources and stuff that you talk to, do you get into that at all, or do you mostly stay with it?
I use the acronym that probably is quite familiar to BLAST: bored, lonely, angry, stressed, tired. So looking at when does this happen? What's the occurrence? I need to, and I'm not but I look at that as being the occasion of sin as well, because that is not actually, if you're bored, it's not a sin. If you're lonely, it's not a sin. So I look at all of those surrounding areas as being the occasion of sin as well. I need to have better habits so that when I am bored, when I'm lonely, when I'm angry, when I'm tired, I know what to do, because currently what I'm doing is leading me into a dark place. So bored, lonely, angry, stressed, tired are, whether people refer to them as triggers or occasions of sin, but those are the things that matter. To sense that, to know that as soon as it's happening, and then to act. And that's I think the biggest thing is and then people will talk about how sloth, or Acadia, whatever the pronunciation is, is often one of the bigger root issues, is the fact of not acting, not doing what I should be doing. I mean, if you look at King David in the Old Testament, his sin with Bathsheba took place because when most kings go out on campaign, David chose to remain back at the palace. So David should have been out he wasn't doing his duty. And because he didn't do his duty, he was then led into sin. And the same is often true with us as men and women. When we're not doing what we should be doing, we end up doing something that we regret terribly. And so, sloth, I think, is often a big connection to all of that.
Yeah.
We have one in our programs that quite often is taught a lot of things, is one called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. You've probably heard of that. I added on bored and stressed.
Yeah. It's the same as yours, but we have hungry.
So we call it HALT BS.
HALT BS instead of blast, just because we added the H.
And they remember that. HALT BS. They remember that one. And
I like blast, though. That makes HALT BS.
That's another. Yeah, that's good too. And then we teach exit strategies. So if you notice that you are bored, what are you doing about it? If you're bored and you do nothing about it, then that's when you're falling, or you're stressed, it's from school or work or whatever.
Walking somebody through what they're going to do, if it was their bedroom that was the problem, or whatever, where their phone is charging, and walking them through visualizing, okay, now take your charger and you're going to unplug it, and then you're going to go into that whole process that you described is part of that what we call exit strategies. But I really like that concept of walking them through, really clearly understanding what steps am I going to take that are going to help protect me or make a difference. I think that is super helpful and super crucial to have a better chance of success. So I love that.
As a coach, with all of my athletes before they run, we practice visualization, and I have them close their eyes, and I need you to see yourself. I need you to see your running form. And we'll literally take them through, where are you at the 200? You look at your watch. What's your time? You get to halfway through. What's your watch? What does your stride look like? What do your arms look like? Where are you at in the pack? So visualization is actually very powerful, and it's also tremendously important when it comes to being successful in accomplishing life's goals. We have to see something. It's just like if you're a painter and you're going to create a painting, you don't just start with a blank canvas and just start throwing paint on it. You actually have to visualize what you're going to create. So as a Christian, if I want to be pure, if I want to live my life, if I want to do anything, if I want to graduate from college, if I want to graduate from high school, if I need to, what am I creating? What does that look like? And then what steps are necessary for that to happen?
Yeah.
So I think in the road to purity, if I'm going to overcome sloth, what am I going to do when I'm hungry? What am I going to do when I'm bored? What am I going to do when I'm angry? It's not even just the fact of like, here's a list of 3 things I'm going to do. I need to visualize myself doing these and realize that this is better than looking at porn for 2 hours. I need to visualize what I'm going to be doing, and that this is actually more fruitful, more beneficial than me doing self-destructive behaviors.
Right. And we find that once you're in that moment and you're feeling the temptation and you're already bored or tired or stressed or whatever it may be, and that temptation is getting stronger, in that moment to try and figure out what you're going to do is just really difficult. So if you've already visualized it ahead of time, it's easier to be like, yeah, this was my plan. I know what this looks like. I have a sense for what this is already, and then I have a better chance of executing. So that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. We often recommend guys.
I think associating with that. So let's say that you're using the word exit strategy. If my exit strategy when I'm hungry is to get out of the kitchen and to go for a walk, if my exit strategy when I'm bored is to read a book, if my exit strategy when I'm bored is to go to my bedroom and clean my closet, whatever it is, I think you need to, this is one thing that I encourage people to do as well. You also need then to associate all the words and images that go with that. When I clean my room or I clean my garage, I feel accomplished. I feel that I've done something good. I'm productive with my time. If I've gone for a walk, I've exercised. I feel refreshed. I feel renewed. And then I need to make a list of all the ways that I feel when I look at porn. Defeated, angry, depressed, self-loathing, making a clear distinction between how do I want to live my life. And I think attaching the emotions and those experiences helps as well. Because no one that comes to confessing the sin of pornography, masturbation, feels great about themselves.
That's a good thing to add on for us, too.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I think that's a good thing to add. And you're describing a lot of things. You know, we have a whole book and in-depth program that's designed to guide people through kind of a homework series through a lot of the stuff you're talking about and writing down a lot of those emotions, how you feel when you look at pornography, and a lot of very similar things. But you've mentioned a lot of things that I think we might actually add that goes even a little bit deeper that I really like. So that's awesome. Thank you for that. I'm curious, switching gears a little bit, what do you think, what do you perceive as, or let me ask you this way, what role do you see spiritual warfare in all of this, in the battle against pornography? I'm curious how you approach that, if at all.
Yeah, so I mean, I always, clearly there is a battle going on. Clearly Satan hates us, and since the Garden of Eden, out of envy, has been doing all that Satan can do to disrupt the beauty of marital love and marital intimacy. And from the very beginning, clearly there was a victory as Adam and Eve no longer saw each other in their beauty, in their nakedness, and so they covered themselves. So clearly Satan wants nothing else than the disruption and the disorder of married love, which is, of course, from theology of the body, we know marital love is called to be an image of the Trinity, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, the husband, the wife, and the child, but also Christ's love for his church, which is our salvation, from Ephesians chapter 5 and Ephesians chapter 6 of husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And so clearly Satan very much so wants to distort the love between a man and a woman. So I think in any of the aspects of sexual purity, we have very clearly, the presence of the demonic. And I think there can be a tendency, at least in my experiences, that there can be this sense of like, well, Satan just beat me up, and almost as a way to kind of give into it. Like Satan's more powerful. Satan is kicking my butt. And I don't like when that's being used as an excuse, I guess. It's just the fact of like, there's a battle out there and it's really, really hard, and Satan just got a hold of me, but I'm going to go to confession and things are going to be fine. So there is clearly, it is a spiritual warfare, but Christ already won the victory. Christ is more powerful than our sins, and we can cooperate with grace, and we can collaborate with the sacramental life of the church and the grace of the church. And so, yes, angelic warfare, spiritual warfare, it's real. We need to cling to what is true, which is Christ. And so, I think there can be a tendency sometimes for people to think that somehow, I don't want to say over spiritualize things, but yes, there clearly is a spiritual component to all of this and a demonic component to all of this, without a doubt. I'll leave it at that and let you answer follow-up questions.
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had and that all makes sense. I absolutely, completely agree. I wasn't sure if you had anything that you gave as a direct approach to the spiritual warfare side of it, in terms of, I guess almost like adding on to the exit strategies prayerfully. What are you doing in the moment when you're feeling tempted, or after confession, or different things where you're also, kind of deliberately combating that? It's like Satan is constantly attacking you, and rather than using as an excuse, being able to, like you said, cooperating with God's grace and taking the authority that we have over ourselves and saying, I renounce that's going to happen. I'm not looking at porn. And not only am I going to do these other exit strategies, but spiritually, I'm also going to try and be rightly ordered and directly combat or renounce whatever it is that is influencing that temptation as well. So hitting it kind of from all angles, with kind of the curiosity there, if that was something you had approached.
Yeah, so I do think a huge part of the devil is, of course, he's the prince of lies. And so many people believe a lot of lies of the devil. I am my sin. I am a porn addict. I'm a masturbator. I am I've used women. I've allowed myself to be used. I am my worst day. I am my worst sin. And so I do think there is a very powerful aspect in the spiritual life about of renouncing the lies that are in us.
Yeah.
In the name of Jesus, I renounce the lie that I am my sin, that I am my worst day, that I am an addict who's never going to overcome this sin. In the name of Jesus and the power of his blood, I embrace the truth that I am a child of God, that I am loved, that I am a daughter of God, that I am beautiful, that I am powerful, that God can do great things in me, with me, and through me. So in the spiritual life, yes, rebuking the lies and choosing the truth is a powerful part of the spiritual life. I think very much so, just because of the wounds that exist in our world right now, particularly because of the lack of huge fatherlessness of many young men not having fathers, many young women not having fathers. The ability to rebuke the lies that exist, the amount of abuse that people have endured, sexual abuse from family members, from friends, from mom's boyfriend, whatever it might be, to to rebuke those lies that are in my head and then to choose the good is unbelievably powerful. So I am a yeah. I mean, I have a prayer card from the Avila Institute, which intentionally leads people through rebuking the lies that are in their head.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think we very much agree. We have some of that in our stuff, and it's definitely very powerful. I think that seems to be, like you were saying, getting into this day and age, what's especially pervasive is just the lies. So many lies. I mean, that's Satan's tactic anyway, right? Is to just make us believe what is not true. So being able to rebuke the lies, like you're saying, I think makes a lot of sense.
I
Absolutely.
agree.
And that's a lot of what we also address too. Besides the tactics to avoid the occasion of sin, avoid the temptation, avoid the whatever, it's attacking those lies, because so many of us, virtually everybody we talk to, we've got a whole line of shame of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted, I'm not loved, whatever. All those are lies. Of course, and then we have to get through those. If we can eliminate that belief, that false identity, then the desire and the craving for the sin subsides substantially. The need for it just is not there quite often.
And that's where mental prayer and silence are unbelievably important. That's where Eucharistic adoration is unbelievably important. Sometimes in the confessional, one of the questions I'll ask is, how long did you look at pornography? And if they say 45 minutes, I'll say your penance is to spend 45 minutes in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Because when we talk about what pornography is adoration of flesh, but it's adoration of flesh that shouldn't be adored, because we should never adore a human being. And the only flesh that should be adored is flesh that you look at through a glass screen, but not the glass screen of a television or a computer or your phone, but the glass screen of a monstrance, of the Luna that's put inside the monstrance. And so there's redemptive power, and I think that's where you were just going, is like the lies can only be undone by Jesus. And so I truly believe that, meditation, prayer, silence, and going before our Lord and having Him say to you, "You are my beloved son, you are my beloved daughter, you are good, you are worthy, you are chosen, you are not your worst day, you are not your worst sin." It's unbelievably powerful and important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I ask one of our favorite penances that we give to seminarians is we'll have them have their penitent, whatever, for their penance, go into the confession or go into the adoration chapel and sit before the Blessed Sacrament and say, "Jesus, when I look at porn, what am I really looking for?" And sit for 15 minutes and just listen and see what it is that you're really looking for. That's the problem. That's what you're looking for. That's the thing that's behind it all, and try to reorder that.
Yeah. True that.
So I want to backtrack a little bit, and I think we're getting close to our scheduled time. How are you doing on time? I want to make sure that you're okay.
I'm doing well.
Okay, awesome. So I want to backtrack a little bit on something. I'm curious your thoughts or your experience in your parishes. You mentioned, so you've been able to speak more publicly at your parish, speak more publicly at the pulpit about this topic. And we have spoken with many priests and gotten kind of mixed reviews on whether or not they want to do that. They're willing to do that. Many are afraid to talk about it. Like you said, like you started out using the word corn instead of porn. And, even a lot of pastors are even afraid to do that, we've found, or haven't thought to try something different, I guess. But, having a lot of the same concerns that the parishioners are going to get mad, all of that kind of stuff. But I'm curious, and it definitely seems like we were talking about earlier, like you said, growing up, abortion wasn't talked about as much, or various things. And for some, it seems that the only form of catechesis they really receive is on Sunday, which it for a lot is not a lot. And then depending on what the homily is about and how generic it is, it's like we're surprised often to hear that a lot of people don't know that pornography is a sin, or that they've never heard that, or like you may have experienced, growing up, that abortion, topics about that and not truly understanding because it's not talked about. So I'm curious, my question is, as you've been able to do that more, which is something that we're working on. An additional part of our priest program that he mentioned, the Clergy Formation Enhancement Program, we're trying to work on how to help guide priests to talk about this more in their parishes, the way that you're doing, to talk about it more at the pulpit, or where they can talk about it more, to bring more exposure to the parents, to the young kids, so that they're prepared for it. It sounds like you've done a fantastic job doing that in your parish, and you mentioned that you've kind of developed a culture around it now. Have you noticed a difference since you started doing that in the confessions and how often people are confessing it, or what have you seen any measurable effects or something that you've noticed since you started doing that more, or a change in your parish?
I would say
That makes sense.
I don't know if there's been a huge change in the confessional. I've been here for 11 years, so it'd be kind of hard for me to monitor that, in the sense that I've been pretty strong since the beginning. We hear a lot of confessions here. We have confessions offered 2 times a month for 12 hours on the first and third Friday. So we hear a lot. I will say this: we hear a lot of confessions. So I would say, just in the sense that people are going to confession is huge, and we do hear a lot of people that struggle with this sin, with sins of impurity. So it is clearly something that people aren't afraid to talk about, and their consciences have been formed in that way. I mean, as a young Catholic, I don't know if I even knew. I mean, I guess I would have known, but I wouldn't have known because I was never formed that pornography and masturbation were sins that should be brought up in the confessional. So yeah, and I think I think what you were just kind of leading into, but I think a comprehensive plan is important. Whether, I mentioned about sacramental prep when you're in second grade, of like talking to the parents about this, and this is a great opportunity to talk to parents, because it is going to happen in the next 2 years, like whether you want to or not. And I have really horrible stories from parishioners in my parishes of innocent young girls being invited to birthday parties in third grade, and thinking that it was an innocent third grade birthday party sleepover, first sleepover ever, and a girl exposing all of the girls that went to the party to hardcore pornography, and the girls not even knowing what the body parts were that they saw on the screen. And other stories where people have had sleepovers that are on the right side, and they don't allow any of their kids to have technology in their bedroom, bathroom, or basement, and kids leaving the party because they refuse to not have their technology at night, and the parents then picking them up and being okay with picking up their child, and instead of showing up and saying like, you're spending the night, like, give me your phone, you idiot. So like, I think like it's important to we have to educate the parents as young as possible. I teach all of our confirmation classes, and I always have a class specifically where I meet with the boys, and a class where I meet with the girls separately, and we talk about these issues like in a very real way. It's then brought up again at their confirmation retreat. I give a talk on the theology of the body to all of them as well. But like, so I would say, like, to brother priests and to anybody who's listening to this, like, this affects marriages. And that's I think, like, I always look at, like, the end goal is either someone miserably living by themselves looking at porn, or someone hurting their wife or their husband by looking at porn. Like, we can't just look at it as like, hey, here's this one person in isolation by themselves living in misery, because the end goal is that it affects a lot of people. And I have seen marriages destroyed, which then destroys their children. Not destroys, but the marriage is destroyed. But their children are then deeply affected by this. And we have to look at the end game. I think you have to look at the end game and say, okay, how do I go back and try to help this? I've had, because of like talking to the second grade parents, like I've had couples I've had wives come up to me and say, Father, thank you for saying that because my husband has a problem. So I think like this is one of the biggest problems in our world right now. Like you can't have solid marriages. You can't have, and the family is the building block of society in the world. If we believe that the catechism says that the well-being of society and the world is caught up in the well-being of marriage and family, you can't have solid marriages if somebody's looking at porn. You can't.
Right.
You can't
Doesn't
have
work.
you can't have sexual relations between a husband and woman be dignified if the husband's looking at porn. So, or the wife is looking at porn, which is a problem. Like it's a both and. So, at some point we need to, we need to answer, and it is possible to do it. So,
Yeah, and we have the task of teaching just that to as many thousands as we can.
Yeah.
yeah.
So you've had that. It sounds like though your experience has been maybe more positive, or at least to a certain degree. As you've spoken about things, you've had people come up and say, thank you, my husband struggled with this, or things like that. Has it been mostly positive experience from the parishioners when you do speak out?
I have had mostly positive experiences. Yes.
Okay. Have you had any negative?
I mean, like little comments, but nothing like, a phone call from the bishop saying, why are you doing this? Or
Yeah. Nobody's come up with you
Right.
seriously angry, like, why are you exposing my children to pornography so early? I wanted them to be innocent, and now you've, cat's out of the bag, or, what do you think you're doing?
We had a weekend where my brother priest and I, it was called it was a weekend when we passed out resources, and it was a whole weekend dedicated to the fact that we were going to just talk on the topic and pass out resources. And in doing so, we advertised like multiple weeks. And there was a mom who reached out and said, I don't know if you want to bring my child to mass this weekend. And my brother priest just like sent her a typed out copy of her homily. And so, I mean, I think there are parents out there that are aware, right? They don't want their child to be exposed at age 7. They don't want their child to be exposed at age 10. And they're trying to protect their purity. So there is that sense of, trying to balance gently the best way to do that. And parents are the primary educators of their faith. So you have to be gentle, but at the same time, you can't be naive. And I'm not going to just sit in the confessional and hear the same sin. If I heard that people were murdering each other all the time, I did nothing about it. But they're murdering their marriages. They're murdering their ability to see someone like it, as another. Right. And like it is a big deal. So I don't know. Yeah.
We had I heard a pastor once, and we actually suggest this too. Is he had a very very sensitive, bold homily. He was talking about abortion in this situation, but I recommend do the same thing with pornography. Is tell the parent, on Sunday, tell everybody, he said, today I am going to have a bold discussion on this topic, and this is where it's going to be. Now, if you have young ears and you feel that, you don't want them to hear this or you don't want them to explain this, you can, one of your parents or whatever, you can step out in the hallway during the homily and we'll have an usher come and get you when we're done. But this is my responsibility. I am your shepherd. If I don't talk to you about this, I will be held responsible in the end. So I'm talking about this. And this is how it's going to go. And if you can't want to hear this, then you can step out during the homily, take your child out, whatever. And then he unloaded after that, I don't know what you think about that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like what we said when we ran the Porn Safe Haven weekend earlier this fall. We had it in the bulletin for 4 weeks. October blank is going to be a weekend that we're going to be talking about pornography, passing out resources. Please just know that we're going to be doing this. And I think important as well. Like it's important for us as priests to realize that it's not always what we say. We're not going to change the world through one homily. But if I have something that I need to say and communicate clearly to my people, it's important for remember that like there's data out there that someone needs to hear a message 7 times to actually begin to really comprehend the truth of what's going on. So sometimes the best thing to do is to say, I'm going to preach just very lightly on this topic, but I'm going to have a handout for the next 4 weeks. I'm going to have an article in the bulletin, and I'm just going to verbalize and say, please remember that this is week 2 in this series on this issue to save your marriage, to save your children, to save our future. So please make sure that you read this article. It's very, very important, and please begin to implement it in your home. And then I don't have to say as much, but I'm able actually to communicate maybe even better in that way. So I think it's all about technique as well, but it's all about communicating a message, right? So
right.
How do we do that effectively?
Right.
We in our program that we're just putting together now, they're releasing soon, the Power of the Pulpit, is about this, and we implore a lot of what we're calling micro mentions that are just softly mentioning the topic and tying it with scripture that week or the readings that week. So it changes a culture and an ideal and a perspective of people without hard saying pornography, but talking about just chastity or sexual morality or things like that, and just presenting that as an idea, and having a thought that we put in our program too is so many people will say, well, I've recovered a lot. I can look at some things with sexual content in them and be okay. And we're asking them, it's not, can you look at this and it not bother you? Should you look at this? And that's a whole different perspective. You shouldn't be consuming this anyway, even if it doesn't bother you. You shouldn't be consuming this kind of content, period. TV, movies, whatever, music types, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Correct. I mean, right now, the cardinals of the world are gathered in the Sistine Chapel, which is covered with a bunch of naked people. But not one of those naked people in the Sistine Chapel is intended to provoke lust. And not one person in the Sistine Chapel is doing anything lustful. And in our world today, the images that we're seeing are never exposed except to create lust.
Right.
It's a completely different intent, and thus we should have nothing to do with it. I would never walk into a room that someone had created that intentionally had pictures of people intentionally having sex.
Right. Or even just partial nudity. Anything.
And this is the other thing that I think that we're going down like a rabbit hole. But when we talk about movies and media, and not that like we should get into all these like categories, but is it a husband and wife united in the sacrament of holy matrimony having sexual relations? Because if it's not, then you're actually watching two people create mortal sin.
Right.
You're actually now a collaborator in people doing something that's against God's will. And so I don't care what anybody says, like that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Right. Are you either participating in a sin or are you funding a crime by endorsing something?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been a great discussion. We're approaching the hour, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we do, I think I just would love to hear you have been, and I don't know what your experience has been with other priests that you've talked to, but like I said before, we've had a lot who aren't sure what to do, or they're afraid to talk about it, or the whole gamut. Maybe they refuse to for whatever reason. And we have resources we're trying to put together for that. But as a priest who has been very outspoken and done a phenomenal job, you really have a lot that you're doing that's put together, that's, in the confessional, at the pulpit, all of these things. If a priest happened to come across this podcast, or if we were to share it with any priests, what would you say to your brother priests who are, or maybe in that boat, they're not sure what to do, they're afraid to do it, or just about talking about purity, pornography at their parish? Is there anything you would say from your experience to those priests?
The image that I have in my mind is the wife who is crying in the confessional because her husband's addicted to pornography. and he rapes her, thinking of other women while he's having sex with her. And is that what I want for everyone, teenage girl and teenage boy in my parish? And if I don't, when will it stop? And I, as a priest, play a role in stopping that. Which of my 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade little girls that's as beautiful as can be on their day of their first Holy Communion do I want being treated as an object by her boyfriend in high school because he's addicted to pornography? And when will that stop? And who has the power to stop that? There's very few people in the world outside of Catholic priests that have a major role that can do that. And we have the biggest opportunity to do so because we see hundreds of people every weekend. And it seems to me to be a shame that we're doing nothing. That would be my encouragement. And then I would say, if you need help, that's why these great gentlemen are right here for you. Contact them, get resources, make it happen. But you don't have to. And this, I mean this for real, but like, this is charting new waters. This is charting new waters. It's the same thing with abortion. Like abortion, no one preached on abortion in the 70s, 80s, and 90s because no one knew how to do it. And we as priests, we are not innovators. We are not innovators. We're part of a church that's 2,000 years old that just does what we saw done. And so if we didn't see our pastors as young children preaching on pornography, preaching on abortion, then we're not going to do it because we've never seen it before. We don't know how to innovate. It's something that we struggle with as clergy, but we can't allow this to happen. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and again, expecting different results. Your people are not going to be healed from this addiction and from this wound in their life until we start doing something. And so, yes, we can pray it away in the sense of I'm going to pray a whole lot, but I have to at some point actually do something to change habits, because the only way you change your life, you have to change your habits. Change your habits, change your life. Your life changes when your habits change. So you got to change your habits to change your life. So what are the habits that exist in your people's lives that need to change?
Very good. Very good.
Powerful stuff. Thank you. That was awesome. So is there anything publicly, social, emails, YouTube, anything you'd like to share for where people can get a hold of you or find you, any of your resources?
Yeah, so on YouTube, we're at All Saints We Are One. All Saints We Are One is our YouTube channel. You can join us there. Also, my parish website, I have 4 parishes, but All Saints Catholic, We Are One. I have 3 other parishes, St. Teresa, St. Martin, and St. Lawrence as well. But you can find us all there. Just type in my name and make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll include those links in the description as well. Thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. This was an awesome conversation. And to everyone watching, we hope you have a great day and God bless.
Amen.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you have any topics you'd like us to discuss in future episodes, shoot us an email at ask@roadtopurity.com. Don't forget to visit our website, roadtopurity.com, for all our free resources and affordable programs to help men and women who are looking to grow in sexual purity. We rely on donations to keep doing what we do, so if you'd like to support Road to Purity, please consider donating at roadtopurity.com/donate. Thanks again for your support. God bless.